Well, we're into another part 2 album. I know I need to work on my Coheed and Cambria album review, but it's coming, it's coming. Before we get into that, let's go into another album that has a part 2 and an overarching storyline. Let's go!
This way that makes me wanna stay, and there's no other place like that.
The Wars, Act 2 by the Family Crest. So, the Family Crest is they kind of tout being an orchestral indie rock band based in San Francisco. In my mind, they're more of like a modern prog band, the likes of, say, the Deer Hunter are. This is their 4th studio release and 2nd under the Wars moniker. Then in 2018, we have The Wars, Act 1, which I've actually already reviewed. You can find it up there. So The War Act 2. I came into this one with lukewarm expectation because The War Act 1 had some really interesting moments on it, but I feel as though they went really hard into the indie rock scene. Like, there were some really interesting ideas that they had on there. I really like the more orchestral approach to the indie music on it. I liked how full and big it sounded, but they treaded too close to a lot of the Deer Hunter roadmap that was laid down within the Axe series that the Deer Hunter did, while also having this very nasally outdated indie rock presentation that is very outdated. You know, that whole thinging with the noise, and it's got the vocals up here half the time. And I just feel like it's very outdated by at least 5 years. You know, like, we've kind of moved on and away from that kind of singing. And it does crop up quite a bit within the Wars and the Family Crest music. And it's still found within here. But this one has a little bit more meat and potatoes that I enjoy. You know, there's a lot more things that I can grab into. The opening track of I Sleep with the Window Open has a number of different crescendos on it and moments that really make me excited and really tie this album together, that I'm like, ooh, this is really tasty. Ooh, this is really interesting. And I love how big and how full the sound is. You know, they basically have a full orchestra at their behest, and it really does bring this whole soundscape to a fold. What I also really appreciate is how the music flows within it. And the first leg really is the first 5 tracks that starts with I Sleep with the Windows Open, In Your Arms Tonight, The Garden, Hearts on Fire, and A Love Song. And I feel like these 4 tracks, or these 5 tracks, really do open up the track proper, gives the listener an expectation of what to expect on here, and it has some really nice ebb and flows. I do think that A Love Song is a little bit more lackluster than it needs to be. I think it's a little bit more melancholical than it honestly really needs to be. It's a love song. It needs to have the full scope of love. Where's the big expression? It's just like, yeah, I love you, and that's cool. I'm like, where's the punch? Where's the emotion there? It's very melodramatic. And then when we come into the Tree, the 6th track, it just blossoms once again into this plethora of sound. Like, there's the celebration. There's the sounds that I was hoping for. But even sticking within these first 5 tracks, I do like the variety of sounds. You know, I do like the ebbs and flows. In Your Arms Tonight is a little bit more of a subdued track, and I like how The Garden kind of continues that a little bit. It has a little bit more of like a darker approach, and Hearts on Fire has a little bit more of like a groove to it. You know, we have some more of the saxophones coming in here. And one of the big criticisms that I had with the Family Crest on previous albums is they used all of these sounds and all of these big moments very, very sparingly. It was like right at the beginning, right at the end, maybe 1 or 2 points in the middle, but not a whole lot other than that. It was just kind of generic indie rock kind of sandwiched between all these big sounds. At least here, they're experimenting a little bit more. They've got a little bit more of a variety found on here, and Hearts on Fire has this kind of a dance groove, but with like a saxophone on it that really provides something very interesting. And the same can be said about the 7th track of Are You the Beginning, with this very chugging, like, I believe it's a cello, chugging soundscapes that provides an energetic burst of sound within it that allows for the the fold of the rest of the music to come on in that case. And it's after the big sound of the tree. So these two tracks really do provide more of the ebb and flow and more of the ushering of music. I guess the next side of this album, we have Pride and Her Song, and they all kind of ebb and flow in different ways. You know, it's got this really nice through line in that sense, but I do... there's a lot of leaning on influences, and I do wish that there was a little bit more variety in these tracks. And when we get into We Evaporate, I feel a little bit lackluster. I don't feel all that excited for the tracks at this point. And I think the biggest drawback that I have to this album is it ends with the two tracks, Baby You've Got Your Legs and Cold, Cold, Cold. And honestly, both of these tracks are closing tracks, and it almost feels as though Baby You've Got Your Legs was a perfect way to end this album, but they still wanted to do more, and so they added another ending, and it just felt like, I'm already getting up and leaving the theater at this point. Why are you still playing music when you have such a great ending point? Especially when there might be another The Wars, like an Act 3. And I just felt like Cold, Cold, Cold came back, and I'm like, oh, that's still going on. Okay, well, I guess we're here for more music. When I was kind of already satisfied with the music that was already presented. So it was very interesting to have the album continue on. It's kind of like when you're walking down a staircase and there's one more step after you think that it's done, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, there's more. So it did bring my enjoyment a little bit down, which is a shame because Cold, Cold, Cold is a great track. Like, it's a great finale track. It's just a shame that it's followed by another great finale track. Still love Cold, Cold, Cold and how punchy it is, how raw it is, how energetic it is. But yeah, I kind of wish that it was not on this album, or at least kind of some of the ideas were restructured into some of the tracks that came before it. So, yeah, in the end, The War Act 2 from the Family Crest surprised me a little bit more than I expected. Now, I was going in with fairly lukewarm expectations, and they were met and exceeded. I still think that the Family Crest needs to kind of distance themselves, from styles and techniques that I feel like as indie artists we have moved away from, but B, not to lean so heavily on other artists that came before them. I still really enjoyed this. There's a lot of really, really interesting moments on this album, and I think I enjoyed those moments more than the overall album. You know, I feel like the Family Crest has a really bright future if they really want to lean into this very symphonic, very orchestral style of indie music, and that bleeds into progressive rock. I think we have something very, very special on our hands. But as it is, I feel like they're two minds in two different worlds. So that's kind of where I'm at for The Wars from Act 2. And I think my final rating, I'll say, The Wars Act 2 by the Family Crest is one that I would probably download. You know, there's enough on this album that I really love and love to sink my teeth into, but not quite enough to either pick up in physical format or go anywhere beyond download. So that's kind of where I'm at for this one. It's a lukewarm recommendation. If you're a fan of this style of music, I highly recommend that you check it out. But if you're not a fan of this and you want to try something, I would honestly suggest checking out the Deer Hunter first. Because that's where I'm at for this one. So what did you guys think of The War Act 2 from the Family Crest? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. And that's all I've got for you guys today. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.